I'm Catherine Arndt, the Chief of the VLGA Connect Studio. Welcome to today's episode, brought to you by the VLGA, your councillor support network and the national broadcaster on all things local government.
Hello, everyone. It's lovely to have you. You're looking well, can I say? And it's good of you to join us for TGU from VLGA Connect. Also looking well this week is Julie Reid. Hi, Julie.
Hello, Chris. Hello, Tony. How are you?
And Tony Rownick. Hello.
Hey again, Chris and Julie. Another busy week. I bumped into Julie in the street yesterday, Chris, which was a bit exciting. So yeah, we normally just see each other virtually.
Oh, what was that experience like, seeing her in the flesh?
Well, it's quite different. Just
almost
novel.
Recognise each other.
It's been a long time since I've seen either of you in three dimensions. I'm sure that would have been very, very interesting. Anyway, lots to talk about as always on TGU, which for the uninitiated stands for the Governance Update, which is what we used to call the program, but we thought that was a little bit boring. So now we call it TGU, and we talk about all sorts of things that are happening around the local government sector with our panel. And of course, it's the A-Team this week, brought to you by Hunt & Hunt Lawyers. Thank you, Tony, as always, for your firm support. Now, I know we've started in a fairly light mode, but let's get serious for a moment and just recognise what's been happening around Victoria in the last week or so with storms, with bushfires. And gosh, this is the time where you really see the value of your local council, don't you? Councils around the state stepping up with recovery efforts. And really, it's quite across the board, Tony, from the west down into the east and the southeast. And
we saw those, we had storms across the state, but particularly I think we've seen the Bass Coast Mayor come out, Claire Leserve, just really congratulating the community for how they've pulled together in the recovery effort around the storms in that area. She's described it as inspiring, the way the community came together, the first responders, the power workers, the neighbours pitching in to help. Of course, council staff have worked a lot of overtime to restore services in not just in that municipality, but in many. What I thought was what struck me as interesting as well from Mayor Leserve's statement on the Bass Coast website. She said that the teenagers were on the street after the sudden silence of their mobile devices. They appeared on the street with brooms and wheelbarrows. So there you go. You just have to cut the service, and they were all out there helping. So awesome across the community in Bass Coast, and I think also up at Ararat, those fires around that the Grampians area. We've heard the Mayor Bob Sanders has come out and congratulated the community on their efforts, and of course there's a big recovery effort around Pomona with those many houses burnt down and lots of infrastructure destroyed.
Yeah, and he was very passionate in his response on the Ararat website, where he says our hearts go out to the community during this difficult time, and we extend our deepest sympathies to those that have lost their homes and their livelihoods, particularly in that Pomona area. So, a really compassionate, really strong message back to the community during this time of adversity. And this is where local government does shine. So amazing.
Yeah, look, a lot of councils put out updates to the community to tell the community what was happening, to make arrangements for, Tony talked about kids out in the street because their devices weren't working. A lot of councils set up arrangements for people to charge their devices out of relief centres and libraries, etc. A whole list of them. But there was a quote that was sent to me in a piece of correspondence from a viewer that I really wanted to share with you because I thought it encapsulated this situation very nicely. He said to me, and I won't name him, the last weeks remind us of what we do. We clear the roads, our teams work 18-hour days, and it all just happens. The public don't know or understand, really. They just want it done. The sector always stands up in these times. If the community want to speak to someone, who do they call? Us, meaning councils. Hopefully the other levels of government will start to understand and respect the work of our teams and make the whole recovery funding process a more efficient one. I thought that was well said, and I noticed Karen Ellis, the CEO at South Gippsland, who was not the person who sent me that comment, by the way, has been in Melbourne with her mayor advocating for better funding arrangements and more government support at these times, which is really needed.
I would agree.
Yeah. And I guess as we record, Chris and Julie, we should think about the people in the Pyrenees Shire. I think that there's a fire at the moment around Mount Cole, Beaufort, heading towards Avoca. Reports this morning that there may be some houses destroyed, but Jim Nolan, the CEO out there at Pyrenees, and his team would be having a really, really busy day after, no doubt, a very busy night as well.
Yes, our thoughts to those. And of course, that's the council where David Clark, the president of the MAV, is on council as well. So yes, best wishes to all. Thankfully, a cool change has arrived, so hopefully that helps in some way in that fight. All right, thoughts to everyone there. Let's look at some of the stories that have made news more recently. A change to the planning scheme in Victoria. I don't profess to be understanding of the minutiae here. Tony, you might, or Julie, being from a planning background. But this has been claimed to be a potential saviour for the likes of Techno Park Drive in Williamstown, where those residents have been occupying an area that's not zoned for residential use and have been told to find alternative accommodation. Tony, is this likely to be the saviour for those people, or is that a bit of a media?
Look, I don't know the answer to that either, Chris. But so what's occurred, folks, is that, as Chris says, across all the planning schemes in Victoria, VC 254 has amended clause 63.11 of the planning schemes, which is the clause that deals with existing use rights. And previously, prior to this amendment, really the position on existing use rights was drawn from a well-known case involving Melbourne City Council called the Olympus Media case. Now, with this amendment, there's a different sort of threshold one needs to achieve in terms of evidence of that 15 years of continuous use to establish existing use rights where the use doesn't comply with the zoning controls. Certainly the lawyers for residents of Techno Park Drive in Williamstown have been quick to come out. They've been quoted in the media late last week saying this is significant. It gives it paves the way for those residents now to prove their existing use rights. No doubt the council, Hobsons Bay City Council, is getting advice from planning lawyers, planning barristers as to what this means. What disappointed me, Chris and Julie, was that the Minister for Planning, in announcing this, or at least being asked by the media about this, was of course asked, is this in response to the Techno Park Drive issues? She said, no, it's, has a longer history than that. But there was no comment that I've seen from the minister or the department as to what impact it will have on those Techno Drive residents. So it seems that the council and the residents have got to sort of work it out for themselves. And maybe there'll be a VCAT decision or something that will help clarify.
Okay, so these sorts of changes, I'm not sure how often they happen where they introduce a change that applies across the planning schemes. Are they generally retrospective in their application as a rule?
Well, no, they would apply from that point going forwards, but it might allow those residents now to seek a certificate indicating their existing use rights. Right. Given the different regime now for determining that. But look, these are nuanced, complicated questions and issues, and that's probably why I certainly haven't seen any official statement as yet from Hobsons Bay City Council. This came out in the media last Friday. I imagine there's probably some wise planning lawyers who are giving advice on this.
All right, nothing to add, Julie, on that. I think that's
No.
a sensible wait and see approach there that Tony appears to be advocating. Hobson's Bay, I've got to say, I've got to declare, former CEO here of that council quite a few years ago now, I think, 6 years. It's punching above its weight in terms of media this week. We've got a couple of other stories to mention out of Hobson's Bay. 2 councillors there have been found guilty of misconduct in arbitration proceedings, and they're the same to so one councillor versus another, and then reverse it for the second matter. Tony, I'm not sure if you've looked too much into this one. In the case of Councillor Tony Briffa, no sanction, but 2 of 3 allegations proven, as I understand it. And in the case of Councillor Daria Callender, there was a finding of misconduct and an order for an apology to be given.
Yes, well, what we have here is actually 2 separate applications, both involving Councillor Daria Callender and Councillor Tony Briffa. And in the respective applications, they are respondent in one and applicant in the other. So they both involve allegations against each other. There's a decision by Joanne Mazzio as arbiter, where there was a finding of misconduct against Councillor Briffa. And this related to a press release by Councillor Briffa, purportedly on behalf of the community as the mayor, where she was referring to a petition that had been received by council, and she singled out one of the signatories, former councillor, now current Member of Parliament, Moira Deeming, and described her as anti-trans. There was also a tweet relating to this issue from Councillor Briffa, where again, Moira Deeming was signalled out and described as being, a leader of a violent rally and other language, being a trans, queer hater, etc. Now, the finding was that tweet didn't treat Ms. Deeming with dignity, fairness, objectivity and respect. She was being signalled out, just one of the particular individual signatories. There was another allegation about the alleged misgendering of Ms. Deeming by Councillor Briffa. However, the arbiter found that didn't think that the language used, which was they or their rather than she or her, was meant to be disrespectful. The arbiter found that it was inclusive type language. So there was ultimately no sanction against Councillor Briffa, given their conduct and demeanour at the arbiter hearing and their commitment to, inclusivity and equality. And the fact that I think the arbiter accepted the submission from Councillor Briffa that if Ms. Deeming had approached them directly, then Councillor Briffa would have discussed the matter in a respectful manner with Moira Deeming. The other arbiter decision is a decision by Simon Heath. And in this one, Councillor Briffa was the applicant and Councillor Callender was the respondent. And this is about a Facebook post by Councillor Callender in June of last year. The title of that post, Chris and Julian viewers, was "Should Council Recordings Be Edited?" And what this relates to was the live stream recording of a council meeting. So the Facebook post in question by Councillor Callender said, and I quote, "The live stream recording from the last council meeting dated 9 May 23 contains various moments where the auditory is muted entirely. I asked the CEO why the recording sound was edited by muting it. He responded that the live stream has not been edited in any way. It seems muted to me. Why the need? You be the judge." And the arbiter received evidence at the hearing that from the council's live stream provider and a contractor called Interstream, they confirmed in writing that the recording had not been edited or muted at all. So Councillor Callender, instead of inquiring with the CEO as to how he'd formed his opinion that there hadn't been any muting or playing with the audio in any way, instead of asking that question, she chose to go make this public post, which failed to treat the CEO with fairness, objectivity and respect, because essentially was alleging that what he said was untrue or questioning the truth of what he said. And so the order was that she needs to make an apology to the CEO, including posting that apology on Facebook. There was another allegation in that hearing against Councillor Callender in relation to media articles where she put her view about increased security measures at council meetings. And the finding was that those posts didn't involve any unfair treatment of others or any disrespect from her, and there was no misconduct finding there. So just, I think, again, it's a salutary reminder for councillors when making public comments, particularly public comments in media, in social media, to make sure that the comments are fair and not disrespectful of a person, not perhaps suggesting that person had been untruthful when the evidence might suggest otherwise, or not singling out a single individual for criticism when, you know, multiple people had you know, done the same thing as the individual who'd been signalled out.
Interesting. Thanks for that analysis, Tony. Did you want to weigh in at all, Julie? No.
Just this whole Facebook thing again, and just it's too easy, I think, for councils just taking to social media so quickly without getting the facts first, you know, and just making statements like that. It just bringing them undone. So, you know, I can't believe that we keep seeing this over and over again after all the arbitration decisions that we've had so far that have clearly spelt out, you know, the inappropriate use of social media.
So a quick pop quiz for you. How many arbitration decisions do you think there have been in this term of council in total?
This term of council?
Yes.
At that council or across the sector?
No, across the state, across the sector. Roughly?
Over 20?
In terms of published decisions, I would say there'd be 25 or more.
Yeah, you're both close. It's actually now more than 30. And how many councillor conduct panel determinations do you think there've been?
15.
That's slightly higher, I think. Yeah, between 10 and 15. The reason I ask is that another former councillor and mayor, actually from Hobsons Bay, Sandra Wilson, has done an analysis of all of those published decisions this term of council to try and draw some insights into consistency, particularly of arbiter decisions, into the time it's taken to resolve those issues from start to finish. It makes for some very interesting analysis, and I've recorded a special podcast with Sandra on that, which is coming out in a few days from the Local Government News Roundup. So that was just a sneaky way of me from plugging an upcoming podcast from the Roundup related to that.
Well done.
Did it work? Did that make you want to hang out and listen to that very soon?
Makes me want to go back and have a look at that website.
All right, so that's coming up. I think that's releasing for subscribers on Sunday and for everyone else a few days later. Before we get off Hobsons Bay, we have talked about the Gaza motion, the ceasefire motion that happened at Hobsons Bay. There's now been a call for that motion to be rescinded by the local Palestinian community group, which is wanting a different one passed that more closely addresses their original petition, as I understand it. The City of Melbourne quite publicly dealt with a ceasefire motion this week and rejected it on the casting vote of the acting mayor at the time, the Deputy Mayor Nicholas Rees. That's got quite a bit of media coverage. Palestinian community protesters turned out at Whittlesea this week. I understand a large group outside the chamber. Some came inside, one with a megaphone, which was quite disruptive inside the council chamber, and that person was ultimately asked to leave. I was pleased, if I can just editorialise for a moment, I was pleased to see that the chair administrator there, Lydia Wilson, made a statement that this is not the space for councils to be playing in. It's a federal government responsibility. I know that view doesn't go down well with some, but it's certainly been echoed in a number of quarters of late. So it's not going away, Julie and Tony, the whole
No.
Gaza ceasefire thing and its impact on councils here.
Yeah, I thought Councillor Rees's comment was worth repeating. And yeah, the risk of editorialising, and don't always agree with Councillor Rees, but I thought that this was important thinking. He said that in his thinking about the resolution, he said that he didn't want to. He thought it would inflame, not heal tensions in the city, and will make a really challenging situation worse, not better. So I guess it's that kind of do no harm type approach, is what is being put before me as a councillor now. Is it likely to make things any better, or is it actually likely to fuel some of the discord that's out there? And I think that's probably a good approach. And I think you mentioned a mayor in the States last episode, Chris, that it had a similar approach. And I think that that's increasingly something councils are, the approach councils are taking to issues like this.
Yeah, Chris, I did recall, and I don't know whether you saw that, I did recall that one of the news reports from Melbourne this week, there was somebody who got on there and said, hey, this is not a space for councils. This is an international, relations federal issue. So that was interesting that you actually got that side of the story from the news report this week. So, yeah, there's both schools of thought that are out there, but that definitely came up this week.
And before we leave Hobson's Bay behind for the time being, I noticed they copped a bit of media coverage for what was called a bizarre rubbish dating initiative. Now, to be honest, I don't see the huge issue here. So what the council has done is invited projects from the community through a Pitch Your Project initiative. Someone suggested, why not combine speed dating for younger people, 25s to 40s, with a cleanup effort to deliver some good for the environment? So they've trialled this rubbish dating initiative, which Channel 7's gotten onto and called bizarre, and quoted some people who say it's not a good use of ratepayers' money, although there was some positive feedback there as well for a new approach to doing some environmental good. Tony, Julie, where do you fall on this one?
I keep having just celebrated my 30th wedding anniversary early in the year. People always ask, how did you meet? Imagine that. Oh, we picked up rubbish together. That's how we met, which is kind of cute, really. I think you've got to keep trying different initiatives, and it's certainly something that would have, it's obviously got some media and had some people come along. And will it endure? I guess that's another question. But kudos to whoever thought of the idea at Hobson's Bay. It certainly brought some attention to their efforts to clean up the local environment.
And Julie, I can't imagine it costs very much to do, other than a bit of promotion.
It wouldn't, and it actually brings the community together. So isn't that what council's all about, is bringing communities together and creating those relationships within the community. Local government's really good at relationships, so I think it's terrific. I think, it's an innovative way to bring people together. I think this is rubbish what they're saying about, pardon the pun, that they're saying that it came across as a way for council to save money. I don't believe that. This is what it says in the report. But look, I think, we're always talking in local government about trying to come up with new and innovative ways of being able to deliver our services and engage the community. Why not? Good on Hobson's Bay for bringing in something new, something different. And I think it's a really unfair criticism, whether it's because Hobson's Bay have been in the media this week and they thought they'd take a pot shot at them again. I don't know, but anyway.
I think we're all in agreement. Thumbs up there to Hobson's Bay for trying something different. I think thumbs down to Channel 7 for beating up the story in the first place, although we wouldn't be talking about it if they hadn't. Okay, some other media attention given to a development in the city of Stonington. This is Paran Square. Tony and Julie, I know you've looked into the differing views on this. What's the issue here? Tony, firstly?
Well, I think it's probably good when we see a bit of community interest, bit of debate in some infrastructure. What we've got here is Paran Square, which was built 3 years ago. It's a community space where there used to be an asphalt car park. The car park's been put underground. There's a new public plaza being put in. It's got various features, a bit of a stage, some steps, some grassed areas, some paved area, etc. Cost $64 million, so a significant piece of infrastructure. Norman Day, who's a really esteemed, well-known architect, he has come out in the media, been quite critical of the design, described it as deplorable Disney, carnival clumsy, and get this is one for the culinary people. If it were food, it would be a turducken. You know what a turducken is, Chris? Julie?
Oh, yes, turkey in a duck in a chicken, or the reverse. Chicken in a duck in a turkey.
well, the creators, the architects behind Paran Square have come out and had a bit of a kickback, tongue-in-cheek. They've compared Norman Day's view of the Paran Square to Salieri's comment, apparently, that Mozart's music had too many notes. That's pretty good. And they've said, look, the trees will mature. It's going to soften the space. But look, there's nothing unusual about, community divide, about new pieces of community infrastructure. Do you know, Chris and Julie, when the Eiffel Tower was built, the Parisians largely were, revolting. They thought it was dreadful. This horrible thing on the skyline, which is, of course, now just so archetypical of, Paris. And don't we all go and check out the Eiffel Tower when we're over there? So there you go. If something can be as iconic as that and be hated in the first few years, well, maybe in years to come, we'll be raving about Paran Square.
Yeah, as a planner, I'm just excited, and I'm going to take myself up to Paran Square this weekend to have a look because, and I think that as a result of this, there will be a lot of interest in what's going on up there. And I think that's great that people have a debate about, whether something works or doesn't work. That's what architecture is all about. And there's always going to be differing views. So, all it's done is it's brought attention to a space, a unique space on top of a car park that's been, converted to an interesting space for the community to use. So I'm up there. I'm up there.
Yeah, so I'm sure you won't be the only one. There'll be lots wanting to have a look. So we'll wait for you to do that exploratory visit, Julie, and find out whether you agree it's either A, a nightmarish expression of garishness, zing and glitz, or B, paradise over a parking lot.
Yes.
We shall wait to hear. Now, here's a question for you. Dog owners in the group?
Oh, yes.
Yes. When you take your dog for a walk or when you go to a dog park and there's doggy waste bags available to you, assuming that they haven't been cleaned out by someone, do you think you should have to pay for those, or is it right that they're provided by your council for free?
Well, that's interesting, Chris, because as dog owners, you would no doubt be buying your own dog bags anyway, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
You'd be going into, a shop and purchasing them, not necessarily relying on the council to supply them. But if you're lucky enough, like I am, in Kingston, they supply them free of charge in some of the parks, which is fantastic. But I don't really rely on that. But they do have a really good system where you can notify them when they are empty and you get them free of charge. But I would always carry my dog bags with me that I pay for. So I believe that in Manly, is that right? Manly are
Northern Beaches.
Northern Beaches are actually starting to think about charging. And they're going to, it's going to be interesting to see what people think about that. It's going to be a dispenser type situation.
Well, that remains to be seen. There's a councillor there at Northern Beaches that has brought forward a motion, which I think the council's considering next week. He wants them to install vending machines. Now, that might sound good, but apparently there are none that exist at this point in time to dispense doggy bags. But who knows? They might be able to find a way to do it because people keep complaining that there aren't enough and they're not in enough spaces. Tony, fair that council should start to look at recouping the costs of this sort of
Yeah, I
service?
think so. I mean, particularly if councils are seeking to expand the service, I believe it is costing Northern Beaches about $100,000 a year for I think 96 of these free bag dispensers at these off-leash parks, etc. I mean, my view is, as Julie says, most of us would have one of these bags tied to a leash or something normally, but occasionally, you might have forgotten to replace the bag that was used or not have the leash with you or something. I'd be happy to sort of tap and go, and for a modest fee, they're a little bag, it might be 50 cents or something like that.
Yeah.
That to me would be perfectly reasonable, and certainly isn't it better than the embarrassment when all the other people are looking at you and you haven't cleaned up after your dog, folks?
Well, you would think so, but therein lies the rub, Tony. So, I frequent a terrific dog park that the City of Greater Geelong has installed at Lara. It is fabulous, and there are waste bags available, and they're generally in stock. Sometimes they've been used. But when you go into the dog park, there are myriad examples where people have not bothered to take a bag with them and have not bothered to pick up after their dog. And I think that's the real crime here, Tony and Julie. And someone in that Northern Beaches story has said if they start to put a cost on this, will it discourage people from actually taking the bags and picking up after their dogs, or is it going to create a bigger problem? I think that's probably something to consider.
Yeah, and look, often what councils will do a trial of this kind of proposal, which is probably not such a bad thing. But I think you're right, Chris. I think there's people that will just not do the right thing anyway. And so, is that, is it really going to deter the other people that will do the right thing from, purchasing a bag? Probably not, as long as it's a modest fee. So, I think these kind of things are worth trialing because they are costs to the community, cost to the council that maybe, is something that really should be user pays.
I suspect it's going to cost them a lot more to come up with a solution to actually be able to dispense the bags for a fee, whether it's tap and go or something, than it's costing them to provide them at the moment. That's my tip.
Maybe. It'll be interesting.
All right.
We should follow this one. We should watch this one. This could be groundbreaking, Chris.
Yes, we will keep an eye on that story. We follow all sorts of things here at TGU. Let me check the list. A few other things that have caught our eye this week. Darren Hinch, 80, undergoing skin cancer treatment. I understand that's not stopping him from saying he just might throw his hat in the ring for the Lord Mayor of Melbourne later this year. That's in the Age and the Herald Sun this morning. Tony, Julie, would you vote for Darren Hinch if you were a City of Melbourne ratepayer?
I have to see his policies. 80,
I can tell you,
Joe Biden to run. It will be shame come in there somewhere. You can imagine.
Yes, I imagine so. But apparently, he said his policy would be to fix up the CBD and to deal with the quote woke council.
Oh,
okay.
No comment, Chris.
You don't sound too convinced there, Tony, and Julie, you're not saying.
No.
All right.
Not going there.
Watch that space too. A report from Government News this week that caught my eye. I don't know, it did yours, Julie, highlighting a view from ICAC that putting a local preference in procurement policies is a potential integrity risk. I think we've probably all sat in rooms with councillors who'd like to see more focus on local suppliers in procurement activities from councils. It is problematic for a number of reasons, and here's one that ICAC says is pretty problematic in terms of integrity.
Yeah, that's right. They're quoted in this report that's saying that for a variety of reasons, the Commission does not support the selection criteria or weightings that give preference to local content. And I know this is an issue that a lot of councils grapple with across the board. Most councils will have some kind of local content weighting in their tender evaluation process. And it might only be small, it might only be 5% or, maybe 10% or something like that. But it's interesting that they're saying local content supplier policies potentially sacrifice value for money by limiting competition and may prevent access to new products and innovative solutions and create unnecessary lobbying risks. So that's really the crux of what their concern is. So in this cash-strapped environment for local government, we've got to be thinking about that. And thinking about really, should we be giving preference to local suppliers based on the fact that we have got this, more challenging financial, sustainable environment that's before us at the moment.
But, surely we should, I would say, this will go down like a lead balloon in regional and rural communities, particularly. Like, I can understand in a metropolitan community where things are quite fluid with services, but in a regional community, a large regional town, that you have a municipality based around, there's almost an obligation that the council is probably one of the largest employers, one of the largest, source of expenditure in that local economy, would do something to support the local area. And it's quite a short-term view in terms of saying it's anti-competitive, because over the long term it could actually help competition to have local suppliers. So I think the Australian government favour Australian enterprise. The Victorian government favours Victorian enterprise. I think it's only right that councils should turn their mind to this. It is not the definitive element in any procurement, but I think it ought to be a component.
It was interesting, though, Tony, that they also said that giving the preference to a local supplier without defining what that actually means could be used to mask conflict of interest between the supplier and the agency. And we know in those rural settings that, there's much higher probability of conflict of interest because everybody knows everybody in those settings. So I don't know what your thoughts are around that, but I just certainly, that rings bells for me.
Well, what outcome do you create, though? If you look at the outcomes, if you go down that path, you're then saying, you're getting councillors out of all those community groups because you're having this really stark approach to conflict of interest. You're getting you're saying, we'll always go for the value for money position, and we're worried about conflict of interest in local sense in procurement. And so, I think the outcomes are quite negative for the local economy and quite negative also if you apply the same sort of reasoning to councillor decisions, quite negative in terms of councillor involvement. I think it needs to be more nuanced in rural and regional communities, because council will purchase its fuel locally often and purchase certain mechanical repair services locally, and often there could well be a cheaper option for them that leads to loss of people from the community because a business shuts down, families leave. It means that a school is then challenged and may not have enough people. So there are a lot of flow-on effects, which leads to less revenue for the council in less rates. So I think we've got to, I think that looking at this in a vacuum, which I think ICAC might have done here in terms of a corruption, conflict of interest vacuum, isn't the right approach. I think you've got to take into account the wider issues here.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Interesting. And the devil's always been in the detail there, hasn't it? Particularly that definition of what local is for some can be a little bit different to others. Darebin Council has announced a risk management approach to determining how it will conduct its meetings going forward. Its next meeting is going to be held online, and from meeting to meeting, it will consider whether it should be in person or online. One of the drivers here is whether contentious issues are going to be debated and a desire to keep everyone safe in the current environment. I notice Councillor Lawkins from Knox responded to the roundup this morning where we featured this story, saying, very interested to hear how that risk management process will manage access to democracy versus the CEO's responsibility for OH&S. Thoughts, team?
Well, you, Chris and Julie, would have been in this situation at times as a CEO where, whilst Darebin are talking now about, a formal sort of risk management assessment on a meeting to meeting basis, essentially CEOs have been doing this for years, and increasingly so in the current term, where they're making a decision about safety of council staff, councillors, and the community who come to these meetings. Is there something particularly contentious? Is there some threat of some level of violence or such interruption that it makes sense to have the meeting entirely virtual? And I think that that's the decision that's been made for the 26th of February meeting.
That's correct, yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, at Darebin. I'm not sure. I see there's a notice of motion about money that's been spent on an aquatic and recreation centre and seeking to have that loan from state government be turned into a gift and then the money applied somewhere else. Maybe that's what's contentious. I don't know, but clearly they've got some concerns about the forthcoming meeting and some potential risks to safety. So I think this is what's occurring at Darebin is probably occurring at all the other councils across the state on a meeting to meeting basis. CEOs are making these assessments.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Tony. And I think we saw that up at Yarra Ranges where there was a risk assessment done and the meetings were closed to the public because of some disruption up there. I agree. I think it's just the due diligence of the CEO and their staff to make that assessment and provide advice to the council about which is the best way to conduct the meeting. This is not new. It's just, I suppose, maybe what they're doing is formalising it. And
the actual formal
saying that this is what we're going to be doing. So in natural fact, it's good communication with the community.
Yeah, so they made that decision at a special council meeting earlier this week. I understand. I'm not sure if there was other business on that agenda or whether that was the purpose of the meeting. For comparison purposes, I want to draw your attention to a council in the US. This is in Raleigh, North Carolina. They've just announced changes to their public comment process at their meetings. Julie, your eyes have gone wide here because I think you've had a look at what we're dealing with here. Victorian councils think they've got issues dealing with a gallery of a few people on a contentious issue. This council has set a speaker cap of 165 for one of its monthly sessions and 50 for another, and adopting a system to reduce the speaking time as the number of speakers grows. This is quite mind-boggling because when you look into the detail, it's right down to the first 55 speakers can speak for 3 minutes. Well, you work out how long that adds up for.
Yeah.
The 56 to 82 speakers can talk for 2 minutes, and then speakers 83 to 165 can speak for a minute. These are mind-boggling numbers, aren't they?
Oh, they are. But I've experienced this, Chris. I was at a council where there were 100 speakers or just over 100 speakers. And the mayor made a decision at the time for each of those speakers to speak for 3 minutes. And we were there until all hours of the morning.
Yeah.
That was significant. That was a significant impact in my life that I'm still traumatized by. But, look, I'm not surprised because you're talking about these kind of numbers of people turning up. They're also suggesting that the deadline be brought forward, which, is...
Well, it's a lot of numbers to manage, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, because they want to be able to get back and talk to these people and sort of say, well, look, you need to understand that you're going to be limited to time, etc. And the poor staff were having to manage that on the day of the meeting. So they've basically brought the deadline forward. Look, I think it's very smart. I think the fact that they're limiting, because obviously in a situation where you've got 165 speakers, it's going to be on a topical issue that's really, really heightened, and you're probably going to get a whole lot of people who are going to say the same thing. Yeah. So, how much pain does the council need to go through to really hear the message is really the point there. So good on them. I think they've made it very clear, and it's a tiered system, and I think it'll probably work.
All right, that's another one to follow with interest. All right, we're going to need to wrap this up as time gets away. We've had a couple of mailbag items I wanted to mention this week. Thank you to Penny for your cashew and zucchini soup recipe. I haven't tried it yet. It sounds yum, and I will be trying that. So thank you very much. And also had some comments about I'm not the only one with lots of zucchinis, although it sounds like I might be ahead in the race to produce cucumbers this year.
Oh, look, and cucumbers are welcome always at my house, Chris. So
oh, you can have some. I've pickled jars full so far, and I've got more to do.
Well, just let me know when I can pick them up.
Anytime, Julie. You're welcome anytime. Julie, you're just Tony. You're just sitting there thinking this is Jump the Shark.
Yeah. I used to call it Daddy's Special whenever I cooked at home, and the kids would roll their eyes because, they sort of didn't know what was coming. It's a bit like that turducken, I think, everything in everything. So, no, I'm just getting some tips from you too.
I think that turducken is very unfortunately named. Thank you to both. We've got a surprise for you next week. I'm not going to tell you what it is, or it wouldn't be a surprise. So tune in next week. Julie, Tony, I hope you have a great week around the sector, and I'll look forward to talking to you again very soon.
Thank you.
That's TGU for the 23rd of Feb from VLGA Connect. Thank you for watching and listening. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to make sure that you don't miss any future episodes. And we'll be back soon with more from VLGA Connect.